Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Antalis' Hotel Decor Live demonstration area. My name is Mike Collins. I'm the Viscom Product Manager for Roll Media, and we're here today to talk about permanent graphic materials. On the left-hand side, we've already talked about refreshable graphics today, and this is where we get the opportunity to talk about materials that we might apply in a retail or hotel type environment that's going to be a little bit tougher, a little bit more durable, a little bit more long-lasting. Okay, so I'd like to hand you over to Tom Earthrowl.
Hi, I actually present the wall covering workshop for the Academy at Antalis, and today we are going to be demonstrating how to remove the wallpaper we've got on at the moment and then reapply, and hopefully we're going to get it done in about 25 minutes. Yeah. So very quickly, we're using a product from the Coala range from Antalis, this is actually the plaster effect wallpaper. You get far more textures in wallpaper than you do in vinyl. Oh God. So first of all, I'm going to start by removing my obstacles. Fortunately, these are on split battens. Still leaves me a little bit of things to cut around, but certainly nothing as complicated as the stag's head. Now, this only went on this morning. It's a non-woven paper, which means that even if we had to remove this once it had completely dried out, it would separate with the paper backing, and we would just have a paper backing left on the wall, which we could then soak off, and in theory we should get no damage to the wall underneath. So just a brief word about surface preparation. A lot of people think that wallpaper hides a world of evils. In actual fact, it will show just as much damage underneath the wall as vinyl will once the glue actually dries out and sucks back. So it's really important that you start with a nice smooth surface, okay, and you fill any gaps you've got in it to prevent piping, and sort of feather the filler as well so you haven't got any ridges. We've then treated this with a product called Zinza Guards, which is a sealer, and it's far stronger than PVA. A lot of the glues we use for this product, especially the heavy duty glues, are very aggressive, and they'll tend to eat through paint until they find something that they can actually bond to. So Zinza Guards sort of prevents that, and it also makes the wall far less absorbent, so you get much better paste usage, and you can also slide the wallpaper around a lot easier.
It's fair to say the same would go with self-adhesive vinyl application as well. You'd always want to pre-prepare a wall wherever possible. Nowadays, with paints, modern paints that are used with detergents and cleaning agents, it's better to take a wall to a set standard. As a product manager, I probably get more quality control issues with things falling off walls than actually sticking on them, so I'd certainly recommend that.
Oh. Right.
So Tom's got one of our products, which is Coala NW, we call it, for non-woven plaster effect. So Coala NW WallDesign plaster effect. This is one of 10 different finishes we have in this sort of material. It's a heavyweight paper, or quite a heavyweight paper, 350 gram in weight, which means it's easier to apply. And the non-woven bit is really where the paper is reinforced at the back, which means it's a little bit easier to handle than a conventional wallpaper where you might paste the paper and it's quite easy to then damage. This product, you actually paste the wall and then apply the product dry onto it. That can save up to about 40% in application time doing that.
A lot of people are still quite sort of scared of wallpaper because splicing, which is the method we're going to use today, can cause quite a few problems. If you do it correctly and you do it with a nice sharp knife, then the joints really should be practically invisible. So what we're going to do here to what we're going to do here to save time today is normally I would paste the wall up in individual drops, okay? But as we've only got a small wall today and it's already sort of freshly glued, I'm just going to paste the whole wall. So first of all, I want to mark out and measure that I've got enough material to actually cover my wall, which is fine. And then I want to just find a laser level.
So Tom is one of our Digital Academy training professionals, independent, works a lot around the world on professional installations, so we like to work with people with a lot of experience and some knowledge to give. The Digital Academy itself is something that we run at Antalis at our head office in Colville, but also we do go around the country with road shows where we actually do live demonstrations as well. Typically, a class might include 6 to 8 people. At one of our academy courses, I think you probably have about 6 people.
Yeah, 6 people at the wall coverings course.
So if you ever want to see or learn about how to apply a product in a particular way, for instance, Tom runs a wall covering course, you can come to the Digital Academy. It's a non-for-profit training academy. And I believe Rick Lee, who's our academy manager, has got vouchers inside for 10% off anyway as well. We run other courses as well for things such as vehicle wrapping, colour management also.
So I'm just starting off by making sure I cut in at the top and bottom of the wall where I can't get the roller. Okay, and this means the products will stay stuck in the corners. And like I say, I'd normally do this sheet by sheet, but as we're against the clock, we're going to try and do one whole wall at a time.
It took you 34 minutes last time, Tom, so...
So I'm putting plenty of paste on at the top, as what we really don't want is to see anything peeling at the top or the bottom. Okay, you have to be quite careful of your environment. If it's really hot, then you wouldn't be doing this. If you had lots of obstacles to cut round.
What sort of paste is it you're using?
So this is just a off-the-shelf, really. It's a ready-mixed adhesive, wall covering adhesive. When we're going around little obstacles like that, it's just important that we, again, cut round those. Adhesives can vary depending on the weight of the paper you're putting up. For a heavyweight paper, you'd use a heavyweight adhesive. For a lighter weight paper, you'd use a lightweight adhesive.
So in our range of wallpaper, we do have a few different weights available. We have 150 gram papers, which are obviously slightly more cost effective. We have heavier weight papers like the 350 gram, which are far easier to handle. We have pre-pasted paper as well. So whereas this is non-woven, where Tom's going to paste the wall, pre-pasted is where the adhesive is already embedded in the back of the paper and it's water activated. So if you want to apply a wallpaper without having to go to the trouble of working with a wall cover paste, then the pre-pasted is another option for you to consider.
And one of the most important things about papering is actually how much adhesive you put on the wall. You want enough that the thing is going to stick, but not too much that it's going to be squirting out the sides when you're trying to burnish it down. So generally one load of a medium pile roller like this is enough to do one sort of up and down stroke, and then it gives you a consistent amount of paste underneath your paper. When we burnish it, we're not trying to squeeze out all the paste. We're just trying to squeeze the air bubbles out, really. Make sure there's still plenty of paste underneath to keep the paper on the wall. Can you just move that out? Like I say, if it was any hotter than this, the paste would stand a chance of drying out before I got to the end panel, but we'll see how we go. Okay, so I'm just going to do 2 panels there, and that will show us, leave the third one. So I want to set a plumb line up now. It's very important to stay plumb when you're papering, and when you're doing any graphic really. So I want to start from that corner, okay, and I want to put my plumb line.
You always work from left to right?
About here. It depends. You can work from right to left, you can work from left to right. Sometimes you have to put a piece in a, you know, a specific place, and then you have to work back from both sides.
And always work with a plumb line, yeah?
We talk all about that in the course, Mike.
Yep.
Yes, always work with a plumb line. Always work with a plumb line. I'm not sure how we used to work without laser levels, to be honest. Okay, so I've got a nice overlap at the top there, and then keeping a sort of minimum amount of paper in contact with the wall. I've got enough paste under there to slide that into position, making sure I've got my overlap at the top. Okay, you just see that that's touching the laser line all the way down. I find wallpaper a lot easier to work with than a lot of the high-tack vinyls that are on the market nowadays. If you have got lots of wall furniture to cut round, you can just go ahead and reapply some more paste when you get to that area. And you also won't damage the wall if you try and take it off. So I'm happy I'm on my plumb line there. Okay, and then using a digital spatula. This is actually from Muraspec. It's designed, if you do get any pockets, that it won't actually crease the paper and take the print off. Okay, I just want to sort of give it a little hold on the wall, and then I can find my knife. A small applicator. So I want to find the corners of this split batten here. As it's behind the stag's head, it's not really imperative that I'm...
So the knife you're using is a little bit finer than your average knife, isn't it, Tom, I think?
This is specifically designed for cutting the joints, actually, in the wallpaper. It's a very, very thin blade, and it basically means you have a very, very thin gap on your splices. Okay, so like I say, I know there's plenty of glue under there. All right, I'm using the round edge. That's just pushing the majority of the bubbles out.
I must point out as well that our academy manager is handing out some details about the Antalis Digital Academy as well. So please feel free to speak to Rick Lee.
It is a good course. Everybody seems to enjoy themselves when they come on, and the first thing they go home and do is practice.
Yep.
Practice papering. Okay, so normally I've got a wet cloth in my hand here. I tend to use these microfiber cloths, as you can feel any air pockets underneath when you're constantly wiping down the print as well, making sure there's no excess glue on the print. When the glue dries, it tends to dry, as a very flaky sort of substance, and it doesn't look good on a finished wall. So like I say, you're not trying to push all the glue out, we're just trying to get rid of these air bubbles here. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. So now I want to trim in at the bottom and the top.
And you tend to, is it a Teflon squeegee you've got there?
Yeah, I use Teflon squeegees. They'll just, they don't heat up as much as normal squeegees, so when you're sliding them into a corner, you don't actually take the print off the actual surface of the paper.
Are they quite hard wearing for putting against the knife, for instance?
They are, yeah. I mean, the one I normally use has shrunk down to about about there now. So that's our first drop on. Okay. What I would then do is, using a thinner spatula, not all walls are very flush, shall we say, and this thing being so hard will actually not get into all the gaps. So this is far more conformable, and then you can just use this as a finishing applicator. Okay, once it's all down, you can just see little bubbles coming out there towards the top. Okay, so we'll just give that a little wipe. Now, with this sort of wallpaper, what I like to do is just slightly go over where my overlap is going to be, So I've got some glue underneath it. Because when we come to splice it, we want some glue underneath the piece underneath, on top. So I'll just go about 60mm over that edge. If you're using a fabric wallpaper, you might want to be a bit careful with that. So now we're ready for our second sheet. Now we haven't got a huge amount to line up here, so I know we've got a 60mm overlap, which is going to be roughly about there, which will give me a guide as to where to put this next drop. Okay, just making sure I got the top of it.
So the Coala non-woven range of wall coverings is also, as well as being fire rated, which makes it very suitable for commercial environments, of course, is also what we call bioproof as well, which means it's antibacterial. So again, makes it very applicable for certain environments, such as medical, for instance.
Okay, so I'm just offering this up now, really. I've got enough paste on there that I can still slide this paper into position. Okay, once I come down to the clock, really, that's my first point of reference, I can then just pull it down into position. And then look at the text. Okay, oh, it needs to come across a little bit at the top. You can hinge it. The less material you have in contact with the wall, the easier it is to move.
And obviously that's a bit of an advantage over a self-adhesive vinyl, for instance.
Yeah.
You just don't have that give with self-adhesive vinyl. People are still probably more familiar with self-adhesive vinyls, and they certainly have got a large place to play within a graphics environment. But wall coverings have certain advantages. They are more environmentally friendly. They're paper-based.
So what we're doing now is we're just checking that the pixels are in exactly the same place. So our overlap is perfect. And that is quite important. So ideally you want something like a 60mm overlap here. Anything more is a little bit too much. Anything less makes it quite difficult to splice. So I'm happy that that's okay there. Capia, that's okay. Normally I'd be checking right at the top and right at the bottom as well. And then we can just gently put it on with my hand. That should fall down nicely. If you were doing this with another installer, then you might have him hinging the top so you could get the pattern all lined up perfectly. So again, just before I burnish it, I just want to make sure there is a little bit of movement in this. I just want to make sure this is on perfectly. So the image isn't moving behind.
You are a perfectionist, Tom, aren't you?
Thank you. Okay, and then with a wet cloth, we just go gently up the splice, so we're making sure that doesn't move. If you've got too much paste on, it's still quite possible to move the paper at this point. And then, you know, we're not going over this particularly brutally. It's just really enough to put the whole paper in contact with the adhesive and the wall. Okay, and now we're ready to cut the top and the bottom. We have to do this before we splice down the middle.
Do you prefer to use wallpaper to self-adhesive vinyl, or vice versa? No preference?
It does
What is
depend
it?
on the you know,
The application.
the application really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just checking again that I'm still in position there. Yeah, happy with that. Now we've got a 60mm overlap here, so I can cut anywhere within that 60mm. However, what I want to try and do is avoid perhaps coming through, you know, the black areas here and the text if I can. So you can move this as you go along. The important thing is you have a fresh snap-off blade with every cut. And you keep the knife in the splice all the way down, all right?
What happens if you don't?
If you don't, then you run the risk of having a double splice if you don't find where you put the knife first time. So with one part of the blade out so it doesn't wobble, keeping the blade nice and straight, I just run that down there. You can see I'm staying away from the S there. I'm staying away from the Roman numerals on the clock. I'm coming through the R. There are tools that you can use to prevent you cutting through onto the wall behind, but I've found that they're generally best with a woven paper that doesn't have the paper backing, which tends to furl a little bit. So we've removed the positive from the top, lifted that back, we're removing the negative from underneath, from sheet 1. And then using our smaller applicator, we can then just push those together, hopefully creating a pretty seamless splice. And with the thicker papers, you can almost hear it click into place. And because this paper is quite stable, it shouldn't shrink back. Sometimes you can get, if you're using a paste that's too heavy on a lightweight paper, it will pull the joint apart. So you need to be careful. Stick to manufacturer's specification sheets if you can. So that's our first sheet on. Are we on schedule, Mike?
20 minutes, Tom.
20 minutes gone already? Oh.
25, actually.
Oh, God.
5 minutes.
Okay, so just for the last drop then. Again, nice consistent amount of paste on the roller, overlapping the joint by about 60mm. One roll up and down. Just making sure I get a nice even spread of paste there.
After Tom's finished the demonstration, please have a look inside the stand as well. This is where we've got, on both of the internal walls, 2 different finishes of the Coala WallDesign wall covering material. We've got leather on one side, we've got canvas on the other. So it's worth having a look. And also there are show offers as well. So we have a range of wall covering material where it's on special offer at the moment, so please ask a member of staff.
Okay, so time for the third drop. So again, I want to set my laser level up to about 60mm. Maybe around there somewhere. So with minimal sort of paper in contact with the wall at the moment, I can still move that around to where it needs to go, which is way down there, something like that. And so with enough paste on, I can still slide this into position. So I'm looking for the little dot there, the clock.
Again, this is one of the advantages of wall covering, isn't it, Tom?
E.
Just that little bit of movement that you get.
Yeah, you certainly, you can, it's quite forgiving really. But like I say, you'll soon know if you don't have enough paste on the wall because you won't be able to move it at all. So again, double check that splice is going to be perfect. And then we can burnish down. So I just really want to make sure that the splice isn't going to move, so I'm just going down the overlap first. Make sure I've got good adhesion. Ow. Find my split batten.
Is this what you would do with any object that you come across?
Yeah,
really? Obviously try and remove things first, perhaps?
If you possibly can, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you have to be quite careful when you're going around heat sources such as radiators and hand dryers and things like that, that you don't really, you try and minimize where you put your splices. Because constant sort of hot air blowing on them will tend to lift them if they haven't got enough adhesive behind them. All right, be careful when you're sort of poking into the corners that you don't go through the paper. And then we're going to cut the top and the bottom. And now we're ready to do our second splice. So again, I can try and stay away from the, bits where it overlaps and splice through a solid colour. So with a fresh blade, a nice straight knife. And then we remove the positive, remove the negative from underneath. And then we can just close that splice back up. As I say, because we've used such a nice thin knife really, the overlap or the actual gap between the splices is minimal. Maybe slightly visible in darker papers, but generally it's you know, you don't have an overlap like you're going to get with a self-adhesive product. So there we go. That is how we wallpaper a feature wall.